What is money? Money drives all activity on the planet, yet we do not understand it. Who creates money? Who decides how it gets used? But more importantly, what happens when the monetary system collapses? Essentially, if the Bank of England creates a £10 note, they could sell that note to any street bank at face value. In reality, the cost of production of the £10 note is only 3 or 4 pence. When the street banks purchase the £10 note at face value, the rest of the money goes into the treasury as money of the people. In today's world, the physical use of money is almost outdated. So who creates money now? The concept of money has changed dramatically. There is no money, it's only numbers on a screen. And what happens when you create numbers on a screen? You can create as much of it as you want. The world today is more connected than ever. To think that countries operate independently of each other is wrong. The world operates as a whole, at least in matters of economics. The monetary system today heavily depends on the flow of money through borders. In this world, imagine a problem with the most important component of the capitalist system. For example, the United States. What happens? The whole world comes crashing down. The global economic collapse started as early as 2018, but things took a turn for real when Deutsche Bank in July reported to restructure its system by letting go 18,000 workers globally over a period of 3 years.
I think most people agree that the costs are much too high at the Deutsche Bank. It has to do something with the size of the staff, investment banking.
Now why would a bank as big as Deutsche let go of 18,000 workers when things are going well and they are making profit? Firing off 18,000 workers is an act of desperation, an act of saving money and cutting costs. However, what Deutsche Bank did not tell the public was a serious financial blowback that the bank was facing. It is important to understand, Deutsche Bank is not just any bank. It's certainly the biggest investment bank in Germany and one of the biggest banks in Europe and the world. During recent years, Deutsche Bank has had the highest rate of investment with the United States and the Trump administration and the Trump family business. Post-2008 financial crisis, the approved news was that the crooked banks were guilty. They had brought the entire monetary system to a crash because of bad lending and bad derivatives program. However, due to the intensity of the recession and suffering of the people, the banks and the economic system had to be restored, had to be bailed. A year down the 2008 financial crisis, Alistair Darling, the Chancellor of the Great Britain, effectively gave £500 billion to the banks.
These are extraordinary, challenging times for the global economy, and they are having an impact on businesses and families right across the world.
And in doing so, the debt became our debt. It was a complete con and ideological situation. If we study the economies of the first world countries during the last 2 years, we have seen a steady decrease in the interest rates of almost all the developed countries, with some countries in Europe such as the UK and Spain touching almost the 0% interest rate mark. A lower interest rate encourages the population to borrow money and invest their savings to buy a house. But if the monetary system was on its way towards a disaster, why was the general population not warned about it? Why were the interest rates decreased? The banks needed the money from the people because there was no more money left in the economy. When person XYZ goes to the bank to request a loan for buying a house, the bank creates a column under the name XYZ for ABC dollars. XYZ gives his or her savings to the bank, for instance $50,000. in order to get a loan that will be repaid during a period of, let's say, 15 years. In the unlikely circumstance of the person not being able to repay the loan, the newly bought house is mortgaged. But during the past 2 years, if the banks and governments knew that the world was headed towards a major economic crash, why were the interest rates decreased? Why was the borrowing of money encouraged? Person XYZ, for that matter, had no idea the world was headed towards an economic collapse. But the banks knew. Fast forward today, person XYZ is jobless, surviving on government relief, having lost all his savings and the newly bought house because it is mortgaged. The house goes back to the bank. What happens next? The house is re-advertised for someone else to buy. It's not just about banks, all these big organizations, financial top of the line, Yahoo Finance, the World Bank, the IMF. They failed once again, just like they failed in 2008. The entire capitalist monetary system today runs on an interest-based program. Banks do not create money. They create money with money of the people through interest and investment that is carried out by the vast amount of money injected in their systems. The concept of installments is yet another example of how these economies solely survive and run on an interest-based program. From big investments to small day-to-day investments, such as buying a jeans, a mobile phone, or an ironing table for that matter, all except the installment program. What the capitalist system does is create hollow economies. Look at Australia, for example. 3 decades of progression, all crashed down by a few months of lockdown. How is that a progressive economy? And the only reason for the problem is the interest-based program. If you study the Islamic way of economic life, it is illegal to use and operate in interest. And for once, I'm beginning to understand why. The entire interest-based system functions to benefit the rich. With an interest-based economic system, the gap between the rich and the poor will never end.